Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you also GMAT Club for putting this together. I am Susan Berishaj. I'm the founder of Sia Admissions Consulting, a New York-based coaching firm. I focus on helping young, ambitious applicants through the application process. I'll tell you a little bit more about me, but before I go into that, I will just take a moment to share my screen, given that I've put together a presentation. So just give me 1 second. All right. I'm hoping that you can all see it, just because I can't see the chat room, so I'm hopeful here. So as I mentioned, I'm Susan Berishaj. I'm an alumnus of NYU and Yale, and for the past 6 years, I've been helping young, ambitious applicants like yourself get into top-ranked institutions. My approach has been to help clients put together their genuine self, and that has resulted in 90% of my clients getting admitted to at least one of their top choice institutions. Before we get into the essentially crux of the presentation, which is MIT Sloan's MBA program today, I want to talk just a little bit about logistics. So I will be essentially presenting for the next 35 minutes or so and talking about different components of the MBA experience at MIT Sloan, including the application process. And that comes towards the end, so I really need you to be engaged. As I present, you may have questions, so I ask that you please include those questions in the chat room. While it is a chat feature, I would ask that you really put together a clear question, what you would like to know, so that I can address it afterwards in the in the Q&A section. If I don't get to answer your question, so if we have a huge list of questions that are being asked and we don't have enough time to answer those, I ask that you please reach out. There will be a link to connect with me in the comment section, or in the description section rather, on the YouTube channel, as well as in the comment section, where you can connect with me and we can set up a call. We can discuss your MBA ambitions, as well as ways that we can help you in that goal. If you like this video, if you like this content, please hit the like button or dislike button, and or thumbs up or thumbs down, and so that way we know, what kind of content to put together that is beneficial to you. So with that said, let's get into the presentation. So obviously, we need to spend a little bit of time talking about the MIT Sloan's Fulltime MBA Program, a sort of a very brief overview. This is a 2-year full-time residential MBA program, which means that you are literally on campus for that 2-year period of time until you complete your degree. The classroom, the class rather, is divided into 6 cohorts, and those cohorts are named by bodies of water, which is a tradition at MIT. After you've taken the core requirements, which are all done in the fall, which can be very, very intensive, baptism by fire sort of thing, you then can choose your electives and start customizing the experience at MIT Sloan. You have 3 options as far as tracks are concerned, so they don't really have concentrations. It's really geared towards a track of what you want to do. And that means the focus is kind of which track you're directing yourself towards. But all of them are interconnected with one another, so they weave and bleed into one another, so that you never feel that, oh, if I choose entrepreneurship and innovation, I can't participate in finance, or vice versa. So let's just talk a little bit about them. So the entrepreneurship and innovation is essentially, I mean, it's kind of straightforward in the sense of the crux of it all is, or crux of that track is about helping, aspiring students co-found a business or join early stage firms. However, if you are someone who has an idea about starting a fintech company, for example, you can still participate in fintech elements that are offered through the finance track. So you can always engage. If you're looking at developing products, you are always also have the opportunity to engage with the enterprise management track. So that kind of gives you an idea of how customizable this track system is, which is very different from sort of a major where you have to complete certain elements to meet that major requirement. They also offer 3 dual degree programs, and that's the Leadership for Global Operations program, the Urban Sustainable Planning, which is an MCP, as well as their partnership with Harvard Kennedy School, where you have the option to either choose the track of an MPP, so Master's in Public Policy, or MPA, which is Master's in Public Administration. The dual degrees are really not for someone who wants to dabble into these fields, but rather someone who needs both degrees to be able to be successful in their degree, so in their career. So really pay sort of attention to those elements as to why would you need a dual degree, and you have to be able to address that and also apply to both programs and be admitted to both programs to be considered for that dual degree option. Now, these are offered for the full-time MBA students at MIT Sloan. At MIT Sloan, so it's offered to everyone, are the certificates. This is the MIT Sloan Sustainability Initiative, which is essentially a certificate for those who want a career in sustainability-related fields. The Health System Initiative, obviously, it's self-explanatory, and the business analytics certification if you want to continue refining and focusing your career. So let's look at the MIT Sloan's MBA class. So MIT Sloan, I mean, obviously you have the data points in front, so I'm not going to read everything, but just a few pointers or things to point out. So after Stanford, MIT Sloan is actually one of the smallest of the M7 classes. So M7 stands for Mega Elite, which is 7 business schools, highly coveted business schools. Those include Harvard, Wharton, obviously MIT Sloan, Stanford, Kellogg, and Columbia Business School. So they have the smallest class. Another thing to note, which is sort of the same number as Booth, is the female representation in the classroom. So they're obviously always looking to try to bring that number as equal as possible. So if you're female considering MIT Sloan, there's opportunity and opportunity here to help sort of change those numbers. If we look at, again, with the M7 comparison, the GPA and GMAT are actually among the lowest of them, of the M7s. However, they're not low, first and foremost, but you have to look at the application holistically. So you have about 62% of the entire class comes into the MBA program with a STEM academic background. And obviously those are evaluated not just on what the number looks like, meaning what your GPA looks like, but rather what was the rigor of the program that you graduated from, and what was the rigor of the institution you attended. These are all components that, of course, make up that decision process in the holistic way. Also to note is that about 14% of the class of 2020 was employer sponsored, which that also sometimes skews the number in different directions, if you will. And that there has been an increase in employer sponsorships as well, which can mean various different things, including students are willing to accept employer sponsorship and go back to the employer, or employers are really seeing the value of MBA and wanting to sponsor more students, more of their employees rather, to get an MBA. So what is MIT Sloan looking for? There's a great focus at MIT Sloan to advancing society. If you look at the history of how MIT Sloan came to be, it all started with this course in 1914 called Engineering Administration. And it has evolved over the years to cater to and sort of impact the society on a global scale. And as a result, it has had various partnerships throughout the years to make sure that they're at the forefront of research, they're at the forefront of innovative ideas to have an impact and to make an impact in the world. So when you think about what kind of students embody this MIT Sloan mission, which is principled, innovative leaders who improve the world and generate ideas that advance management practice, they look for individuals, or rather for students or prospective students who will make the most out of the MIT opportunities there. They want individuals who can identify opportunities and can take advantage of opportunities so they can make an impact. They also are looking for individuals who are very collaborative, because a lot of the work is going to be around collaboration and around sort of sharing of ideas. It is for that reason, you really have to be authentic. You have to be sort of thoughtful and aware of yourself and how you engage in that community. The focus is also on applying classroom learning to the business world and the problems that you're trying to solve. So, of course, MIT Sloan is a very rigorous program. So academic excellence and achieving or this achievement-oriented person is really a person who will thrive in the MIT Sloan program. So when we look at sort of post-MBA, where are these students going to? We will see that about 77% of the class is actually taking roles at top 3 industries. So that's consulting, technology, and finance. And another 18% is going to take roles in the manufacturing industries. So this includes healthcare, biotechnology, pharma, which make up about close to 6%. Then you have automotive and aerospace that takes about 3%. And then you have consumer products that make up another 3% of the class. So the numbers obviously go lower from there. But you see that there's a heavy concentration in a lot more of quantitative roles, which of course comes to no surprise, given that MIT period, so MIT, the university itself is very STEM focused, and MIT Sloan incorporates technology within business. So all the courses and the rigor of the program is much more quantitative and analytic focused. So what does that mean? It really means that students that are coming out of the MIT Sloan program and students that are attracted to MIT Sloan period are individuals who are really comfortable and want to be engaged in quantitative and analytic thinking. And when you look at the sort of functions that students are taking after graduation, I mean, there's a staggering number of close to 40% going into consulting, strategic planning types of functions at different organizations. And one thing to note here is that Obviously, if we think about technology, we think about the Googles and Facebook and all of those. But Amazon actually has increased its presence, increased its hiring from MIT Sloan. If we look at the numbers from 2019 and 2020, it almost doubled, which actually sort of supports the anecdotes I've been hearing from clients about the really increase in Amazon presence at MIT Sloan. So a few about the program highlights. The ecosystem is very mission focused. So you need to have, so not you need to have, but rather students there are very focused on developing their project ideas into developing what it is that they aspire to do. The learning approach is a combination of theory, case study, projects, and group work. So for that reason, of course, collaboration is a huge component of that experience there. But it's also this idea of action or taking action with what you know. It's not about retaining the information that you have and sort of applying the theories in sort of or thinking about the theories. Rather, it's about how you're going to apply what you learn in the classroom into the real world. And that is done through labs that operate in different, operate domestically as well as globally, but also through the Sloan intensive period. So a little bit about this intensive period, yes, is that in the middle of each semester, student or classroom sort of it's in a way disrupted by actually taking what they've learned in the class and applying to a real world problem. These intensives are taught by professionals in the field or faculty. And the idea is to, again, build those lessons learned through action taking. The difference between the fall, and this is done every single semester or every single term, the difference between fall and spring is that during the spring, students actually have the Sloan intensive period during the spring break, which allows them to actually work in projects at different regions or different parts, whether they are different parts of the United States or different parts of Latin America or wherever they are interested in working on a project. And they're able to actually go there during that spring break to engage in that project that they're working on. Obviously, as I mentioned, it's a very collaborative environment. And what I particularly like is that the MBA classroom in the fall, in the core, during the core classes, you're actually taking your core requirements with the MIT Sloan's Fellows MBA students, which is a small number of students. And these are professionals or mid-career professionals with about 10 years of experience, although the average is about 14, and they can be an invaluable resource to you, especially if you match as far as the career that you're looking to have and where they are. They can be mentors, they can guide you through the process. Obviously, you can network with them, and they can become, refers in the future and towards the job that you want. So I think that's a really wonderful opportunity there as well. You have quite a lot of centers and initiatives at MIT Sloan that you can be a part of. And again, this is all in an effort to try to provide as many opportunities as possible for you to make the most out of the MIT experience so that you can impact the world. Two that I would like to really bring to our attention is the Leadership Center, which is really focused on building courses and programs to help students develop their leadership skills and their leadership style. This is approached through reflection and is a way to help students understand how to use the resources to solve problems that they will be faced with in the future, whether those are personal problems or problems related to a team or a project that they're working on, or even an institution or an organization on an organizational level. And I think this is an invaluable skill that, of course, you will need, and it will be impactful your entire lifetime. Another component that I would like to just point out is the entrepreneurship at MIT Sloan. This is a big sort of buzzword, and obviously if you're interested in entrepreneurship, MIT Sloan is a great place to be. And there are two centers that that are really wonderful for those that are interested in entrepreneurship, but they're slightly different from one another. So the Legatum Center, its focus is on social and economic progress in the world, typically focusing on developing countries. And opportunities there come in various different forms, including fellowships. You have boot camps, you have grants and cases that you can work on real-world problems or help resolve real-world problems. The Center for MIT Entrepreneurship is around building your business, building your idea, and making it or bringing it to life. And you have a lot of resources available to you to do that. So you will be obviously building frameworks. You'll have courses, you have co-curriculars, you have state-of-the-art facilities to do what it is that you need to do for whatever project you are looking to bring to life. And you also have advisory services to help you along the way as you build that idea and bringing it to life. And obviously start your venture. And a note here is that about close to 4% of the 2020 class actually was not looking for employment post-graduation because they had already started their business. So there's a lot of opportunity at MIT Sloan for those that are interested in entrepreneurship. Now, all of this is wonderful, but obviously the next question is, how do I get in? Right? So I can take advantage of all these opportunities. And an area that I want to focus on, obviously, is the application requirements. Obviously, here I did not include completing the questions in the application portal, which are obvious, and of course did not include components about paying the fee, which is also obvious to submit your application. So the MIT Sloan's MBA program requires about 5 components to your submission, in addition to what I just mentioned, as well as an interview. And I'm going to go through each one of those and provide some tips and things to think about for each of those segments, so that can be, so you can start thinking about, if you haven't done so already, how you're going to address your story for MIT Sloan. So let's start with the cover letter. So this is one of the only top 20 MBA programs that asks for a cover letter instead of an essay response. And it's really important that you don't try to make it into an essay, but rather follow the instructions and present it as a business cover letter. And when you think about, I mean, if you've ever submitted a cover letter for a job, you know that you are essentially requesting to be considered for the job that you're applying to. Same thing here, the same idea applies here, is you are seeking a seat at the table at the MIT Sloan community. So this is about your pitch. You have 300 words to pitch to MIT Sloan's admission team why you deserve a seat at the table. And there are several different ways, but at least 2 ways that you can approach this. One can be talking about, focusing rather on your professional achievement, which is a more typical way to go about this. Talking about your professional achievements that you have done so far, and why that is a deserving. Why is that deserving of a seat at the MIT Sloan's classroom? So you can talk about the accomplishments that you've had, especially if they have had a lot of impact in the world. That can be something that can definitely benefit your application. Another approach, or another way that you can talk about it, of course, it's talking about how you're going to take advantage of all the opportunities that MIT Sloan offers. So you really want to be as vivid as possible with your language to talk about what you're going to make out of that experience there. this needs to be, so an important element to consider here and to keep in mind here is that this needs to be about your strengths. So you really want to focus on where your strengths lie. I would highly recommend that you ask your friends to identify some of your strengths, ask your colleagues to identify some of your strengths, ask your boss, your supervisor, your mentor to identify some of your strengths if you are uncomfortable and don't really know exactly how to evaluate your own self. But you do need to be reflective in this process. And this is not just here, but in the entire application process. You have to be reflective of what you bring to the table. This is not, of course, a weekend application. You really need to think about what you want to present to the admission team that makes you unique and makes you different, so that they can put together a diverse and vibrant classroom for next year. Sometimes I see people or applicants rather try to bring in the adversities that they've experienced in their life and try to kind of make this into an essay format. I would highly recommend against approaching it that way for many reasons, including it is going to come across as you sort of pleading for a seat at the table in an unattractive way, to be frank. And instead, and MIT is not going to fall for that. So just let's be real. But the only caveat I would say is if that adverse experience that you've had has influenced your entire career and is going to influence everything that's to come, your entire professional development, meaning that whatever it is that you experienced has sort of driven you in a direction, a career that you are moving towards, then obviously that can easily be incorporated into the cover letter and to demonstrate your passion. Because if you think about making an impact in the world, it's a huge commitment. And you have to come in with a lot of passion to be able to stay on track and continue moving forward, even when you experience setbacks. So hopefully that was helpful. And if you have any questions about the cover letter, I'm happy to answer additional elements, in the conversation later. But what I would say is just make sure that you are also economical. You only have 300 words. Try to have several people read it. Make sure that no word is wasted, and make sure that you're capturing, of course, a vivid language. And I know that it's really hard balance to keep those two in mind. But the first step is always to put together what you want to put together, and then cleaning it up and making it into, obviously the pitch that you want the admission team at MIT Sloan to see in your cover letter. The next component is the video essay. They ask in a 60-second, so 1-minute video, you have to introduce yourself to your future classmates. Now, it goes without saying that your future classmates will not actually see this video. It is actually for the admission team, and it is for them, or they use it rather, to better understand your personality, so they can again put together a strong classroom, so they can see how you would fit into the classroom at MIT Sloan. Remember that MIT Sloan is looking at putting or bringing together or sort of bringing a collection of very vibrant and diverse students in their cohort. So you want to ask yourself what should, first and foremost, what should the takeaway of the admission team be when they watch your video? What is unique about you? What is different about you? What do you care about? This does not need to be, and in most cases, it shouldn't be professional at all. It should be about what you care about, period. What you care about. This could be about, Obviously, it should be about impact in some way. So make it unique to your own story. What I would also say in the video essay, try again to be vibrant as well. In the sense of what the school is looking for, you should try to emulate that. So a white sort of background, it's not the most interesting background. Think about where you are, what you care about, and try to incorporate that into your environment, into the environment that you present or that you record that video in. So if you have a favorite park, that could be a place that you can record your video. Perhaps there is a sort of a city skyline that you go and record your video. Or maybe you really care about sort of projects you're working on, and you're sort of in the middle of your war room, if you will, at your organization. There is an excellent place to actually record your 60-second video. Now, you shouldn't have a videographer, you shouldn't have sort of editing and Photoshop, and none of that needs to be in that video. It needs to be a one take. But just try to bring sort of vitality to that video that captures who you are, that goes beyond, of course, a white pale background. Obviously, lighting and sound is going to be important. You can have the most beautiful skyline. If they can't hear you, you haven't done your job. So just make sure you are mindful of those elements when you put together your 60-second video. And also be natural, be yourself. Don't sound scripted, even if you have prepared bullet points in advance. Be yourself in your presentation. That's going to be more important. The next component is the organization chart. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard this, that, oh, well, it's wonderful. I'm just going to take the organization chart from my company, for my employer. They have already put one together. Please don't do that. This is an opportunity for you. The employer has put an org chart if they have created one for the organization and not you specifically. This is really an opportunity for you to demonstrate sort of where you fit into that hierarchy and in the organization, and what you have been able to accomplish, or what you may be able to accomplish because of where you are in the organization. If you have sort of dotted line reports, those may not reflect in the company's org chart, but they can definitely be reflected in your org chart that you put together for MIT Sloan. They also ask that you identify if your recommender is a current supervisor or someone at the organization you're working at, that you identify where they are in the hierarchy. So they also can see how everything fits together and where the reporting lines are. If you are a business owner and, even a solopreneur, you can become the center of that chart and talk about how you have impacted the world around you in services that you've been able to offer. So there's a client relationship, there's a contractor relationship, and how you manage all of those. There's also individuals who have had client-facing roles. You want to talk about where you fit into that project you're working on, so that you can really demonstrate to MIT Sloan where you are in the organization and the potential impact that you can have, which obviously will be substantiated by the resume, which we'll talk about next, which actually makes a good sort of next step. But what I would say here before I change the slide is take the time to put together a strong organization chart. Be really detailed. The devil's in the detail. Really make sure that you have put in a lot of details, that if you put in boxes, that the boxes are not, there's no sort of lines, sort of hanging out out of the box. Just be really detailed, because those are the elements that demonstrate to the admission team that you put in a lot of care. into your application and that you are putting your best foot forward, and that carries weight as well. So the resume, it's very straightforward, one-page resume. What I would want to say here is some people have a lot of accomplishments, which I applaud you for those that do, and can't fit a one-page resume to really capture anything meaningful. So I would say use the entire application should be viewed as a puzzle. Every piece should add color to who you are. And don't be afraid to actually use the application portal as another area where you can put in additional work experiences that you've had that don't fit in the resume. Just like the cover letter, the resume is also a pitch. So use it to your advantage to present, again, your best foot forward and put your best experiences there. Obviously, there shouldn't be gaps because those raise questions that because you are selective. So you wanna be mindful as to how you put things together. Another component that I see often is, photographs in resume. MIT Sloan does not care about those, and actually any of the MBA programs at any of the schools don't want you to include a photograph. They don't want you to include your date of birth. And MIT Sloan in particular does not even want you to include your name or your phone number or your email address. All of that is in the application. They want you to focus on your achievements. So you have a little bit of extra space, a few extra lines, typically about 2 or 3, that allow you to develop the content of each of your jobs. And you want to focus on your achievements again. The achievements, when you think about your achievements, it's about what did you do specifically. It's not about, while you can work in a team, it's about how you have participated in the team. What did you do? Obviously, how did you go about getting the project completed? And then, of course, what was the result? What was the impact that you have been able to make? These are all elements that need to be captured into your resume, and sometimes that means 2 to 3 sentences in a bullet point, and that's okay. It's really important that you capture quality versus, 10 lines of bullet points that don't really mean anything in an application. So spend a lot of time putting together, again, I will keep repeating this, but spend a lot of time putting together your resume to making sure that you have captured the achievements that you've been able to make thus far in your career. And those for MIT Sloan and for all the other schools is an indication of what's to come in the future. And that's how they're evaluating your profile. So you won't have another opportunity to talk about your achievements until the interview. And if you haven't put together the strongest application possible to get you to the interview, then you don't even have that opportunity at that point. So I cannot emphasize enough how important putting together your achievements in your resume are, especially also because the cover letter is only 300 words. 2 more items, and next one being the letter of recommendation. Obviously, the letter recommendation is an important component, and MIT only asks for 1, with the option of adding additional ones that the MIT Sloan can choose to contact when they want to contact them. So the one letter recommender, it's sometimes a blessing and sometimes not so much, because you have to choose which one is going to be a recommender. And I would say choose someone that can really speak to you and your accomplishment to date. It's not about their role in the organization. It's not about the MBA that they have from MIT Sloan. It's about how they have witnessed you, and do they believe in you enough to write a really strong and enthusiastic letter of recommendation. That is going to be more important, because they're not in the hot seat. You are, in the sense of you are being evaluated. They are not. they are there to lend a hand to the admission team, to show, to have a sort of a voice in sharing what you have been able to accomplish to date. They will be asked to evaluate, so they will ask to rate you in different categories of your character and the different elements that make you part of a team. What I like about MIT Sloan is that it's not a 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being exceed expectations, which can sometimes not be the best approach, especially because people rate things very differently. MIT Sloan does have actually different types of questions for sort of, or different options for different questions that they're asking, so they can get a better understanding of you. The more important components, or the more sort of lengthy components of their letter recommendation are the essays that you see on the screen, and one of which is to evaluate your performance. Again, they need to be able to talk about how you have performed, your strengths, your achievements to date. And then another one is for them to be able to provide feedback, or to provide examples when they have given you feedback and how you've responded to it. Now, if someone is the CEO and never given you any feedback, like genuine feedback, or has never witnessed you in any capacity other than in meetings, and can't really talk about how you work and how you approach problems, they may not be the best person, even though they are the CEO of their organization. So really be mindful about who you choose to have as a recommender. I would say also, recommenders need to be reached out to very early on in the application. So you want to give them at least 1 month before the deadline all the material that they need, and have a conversation with them about what you want to do, so that they have time to put together a strong letter of recommendation in support of your candidacy. They are, I'm assuming, very busy people, and you're asking them to do something for you, to do you a favor, to help you in your professional goals. So of course you want to show them the courtesy and the respect that you give them enough time to do that in the best way. Also, having a conversation early on allows you to see if they're actually going to be the right person. If you ask them, I'm looking to apply for an MBA program, and I would like, I was considering, I would like for you to be you to write a letter of recommendation, and I was wondering if you have the time to write a favorable letter of recommendation, and the deadline is X. They have the option at that point, if you tell them, of course, early on, to say, oh, I'm really sorry if they don't want to support your application. And that it's actually a blessing, if you will, for you, because you definitely do not want to ask someone who is not enthusiastic to write the letter recommendation for you. And you want to know that early on, so you can choose someone else and ask someone else who will be able to write the letter recommendation. So doing it early on is really important. Another and final element here on the letters of recommendation is you want to share with them your resume. So they should see your career progression beyond what they have supervised you on, and so to help them sort of build that excitement for you. But also you want to remind them about the work that you have done for them, so that they can speak to that in your letter recommendation. And typically you do that by providing them, obviously, reminders of accomplishments that you have had, perhaps even in this case, the feedback that they have given you and how you have grown since then. You also want to make sure you tell them what your goals are, so that they know that you can succeed in that goal, and of course that you give them ample time to do it. So after you've submitted your applications and the recommenders have submitted their application, now remember, it is important that they submit their letter recommendation on time, because your application will not be reviewed until then. And that could also mean that if you're applying to round 1, your application may be moved to round 2 because your letters of recommendation have not arrived in time. So all of these components are tied to one another, making sure that you obviously put together your best your best sort of candidacy forward. After you've submitted your application and the letter of recommendation has been submitted, you are then invited for an interview. Now, most of the schools have interviews with alumni. MIT Sloan doesn't. So it's not a blind interview. The admission committee, or a member of the admission committee, is going to actually interview you, which means that they have read your application and they have read everything you've submitted. This means that they can ask you any kind of question about your application. So anything you include in there, you need to be willing and able to talk about it in an interview. They can ask anything, right? You can prepare as much as you want and come up with any question that you can think of, and you can find online. The interviewer can just throw you a curveball and you may not see that coming. And the reason that is because they want to get to know you, and there are questions that they have as they're evaluating your profile. And that's an opportunity for them to get to know you further. Remember that you are actually talking with a person. They're not going to sit there with a list of questions to ask you and you're responding, but it's an actual dialogue. It's conversation. And you want to connect with the interviewer, because the more you connect with the interviewer, it also means that the better the image for them to see you as part of the classroom, as part of the cohort at MIT Sloan. So in order to have dialogue and to have a conversation, that means that you're not going in there with memorized responses and memorized examples. That's just going to make the entire experience sort of disingenuine, and you also don't want that. So when you prepare for the interview, think about the experiences that you've had. So obviously read your entire application, but also think about different examples that you can talk about that also substantiate who you are as a professional. And these, you don't need, a different example for every question that you will be asked. You just need to have a list of other examples that you can reference in support of any question that may come up in the interview process. And this also means that you will be actually able to have a genuine conversation and be able to use an example for different questions, and just sort of change how you present that example depending on the question that you are being asked. And those have been much more successful interviews than trying to memorize a response to every single question you can think about, which I often see in applicants trying to prepare. And of course, I understand why, because, by the time you get to the interview, you're 50% there, and you want to make sure that you do everything you can to get to that other 50% so you get the admit. But it's always better to be genuine and connect with the person and have examples, and always go prepared, because after all, it is an interview. But go in being yourself, being who you are, and that's going to win the admission, the admission committee, more so than memorizing anything. So we have deadlines coming up in just slightly over 2 months. Round 1 application is due. Round 2 is the 19th of January, which is very much the 2 rounds that I often recommend applying to. By the time you reach round 3, there is very limited seats by that point. And unless you are, I don't know, some superstar, you have very low probability of getting admitted. Now, last year, the numbers have been quite a bit shocking, in the sense that by round 1, 90% of the class was filled. And this is not intended to make you fearful or anything, which is not going to be the case this year, because last year there were a lot of deferrals. So I don't want you to, leave this session and start sort of panicking that you need to apply to round one. The point is you want to really put together your best application between those two rounds, so that you can have your best chance at being admitted into the program. You can choose to apply to round one if you want, but if your application is not ready and if you don't present your best self, it's not going to lead to the result that you want. So that's really, really important. And it's also important to remember that you will never be perfect. Your application will never be perfect. There's always something that you can learn, and something that you can do. But the idea here is that, or rather, you're not going to be a perfect applicant. Is more of the point. The idea here is that, of course, you put your best self forward, and don't be afraid to demonstrate any weaknesses that you have, so long as, of course, you demonstrate the character we talked about at MIT Sloan that they're looking for. Someone who is really interested in making a huge impact in the world and make a difference in the world. And even if something is not it's not perfect, it will be okay on their end. So I will stop sharing my screen right now, and go to the questions rather. So just give me one moment. All right, I see quite a lot of questions here. So I have a question from Prerana, who says, no GMAT required for MIT this year. Will this change anything? I really am not I don't really recommend applying without a GMAT unless you have a lot of reasons why you don't need a GMAT, or a reason why you can't really take the GMAT. So if you can't take the GMAT because of the internet connection not being stable in your home and the entire centers are closed, obviously that's a reason to not submit a GMAT. If you have that and the ability to demonstrate that you have had great success through courseworks or through certifications, so I'm thinking like the CFA or CPA or something like that can demonstrate that you have the quantitative skills to succeed in a rigorous program like MIT Sloan, then of course you can apply without the GMAT. But if you're an overrepresented candidate, if your profile is, kind of on the average size, if you will, having the strong GMAT can help your admission. So I would really be cautious to not just, go with the idea that, they don't require GMAT, so I don't have to submit one. They're looking, just because they don't require the GMAT, they're looking for other ways they can show, or you can show to them how you can succeed in the program without the GMAT, and that you are a strong candidate even though you do not have the GMAT in hand. So that's not going to necessarily help the case if you can't substantiate that. All right. Let's move on to the next question. How important is GPA? Well, MIT Sloan is essentially a research-intensive institution. You will be required to work really hard during that 2-year period there. You have to roll up your sleeves and do the work that's required. And that is both in the academic side as well as the engagement side. So the action learning I mentioned earlier. And to sort of balance those two out, you need to be able to demonstrate that you have the academic aptitude to succeed in the program. There's obviously a range, and everyone has a story of what happened in college. Given that it's the average person applying has about 5 years of work experience. A lot happens in 5 years' time, and people change, and experiences change, and circumstances change. So it's not going to be the deal breaker if you do not have a strong GPA. However, you need to be able to demonstrate that GPA, whatever that number looks like, it's not a true reflection of you and your academic aptitude. So you're able to, provide supporting evidence that you're strong academically and will be able to succeed in the program. What they don't want is to have individuals that are, going into the program and are struggling at the program, and as a result, drop out. Obviously, that's not something that they're looking to admit. So they want to make sure that those things don't happen. And for that reason, they have obviously high expectations on the candidates applying. For someone who I have a question from NASCAR. The question is, for someone who is already a manager, does it make sense to go for an MBA? It really depends on what you want to do, what your goals are. It can make sense if you want that executive level role down the line. If you are already a manager and maybe have 10 years of experience, you should consider the MIT Sloan Fellows MBA program, which is for mid-career professionals. And that's a 1-year intensive program that is intended to help you get to that next level in your career. The average class there is about 14 years of work experience. So depending on how many years you've had thus far. But go for an MBA only if you need an MBA to get to where you want to go. If you want the C-suite level role, that long term, and you're looking to perhaps work for a top organization, an MBA is going to be required. And of course, the longer you wait, the more limiting the opportunities become, in the sense of you will have to then do the executive MBA, which is going to be typically limited to your geographic region because of the way the classes are structured. You will be able to travel during the weekend, etc. So you might want to consider what your goals are, and then decide if an MBA makes sense. And depending on how far along you are in your career, which MBA makes sense if you go down that route. I'm sorry, D. Das mentioned that the slides are blurry. I apologize for that. Perhaps there were some internet connection issues. If you want to send me a message, I'm happy to share the slides with you. So I have a question here. Which application evaluation factors that provide the highest weightage during the application process, and is there any difference between applying to round 1, 2, or 3? The application is evaluated holistically. That is something that the school continues to say, and it is evidenced in the way they evaluate candidates. There's no one thing that is that takes more weight, but there are, of course, elements that we talked about here that take a lot of weight, that are weighted in the sense of how you're going to be able to, are you going to be able to succeed in the program? So in that sense, you're looking at the academics and your GMAT, GRE scores, but then also, do you have that character that embodies the type of student that is going to be in the MBA program, but also is going to be a representative of the MIT Sloan program for the rest of your life. So you really need to make sure that you capture holistically the type of candidate that they want, right? So the achievement is another element that's really important, regardless of if you held a leadership, quote unquote, a role in up till today. I mentioned earlier the round 1 and 2 being the preferred rounds that have the higher probabilities of being admitted, provided you have a strong application. By round 3, most of the class is filled, so you have a very low probability of being admitted at that point. Obviously, the earlier you can apply with a strong application, the better it's going to be. So I'm going to answer one last question. And hopefully the rest can join me, can email me, and we can have a conversation about your profile. So, so I have a question from Mohit Sharma, who says, how can one highlight one's quantitative excellence if the undergraduate scores aren't the best representing the same? Will Quant 51 compensate for a low GPA? Quant 51 can definitely help demonstrate your quantitative abilities. If your undergraduate scores haven't been the best, you obviously have to describe that. But then also you want to make sure that you talk about your, hopefully you've had opportunities to apply the quantitative skills in your job, in the experiences that you've had, so that you can also highlight those again to substantiate your undergraduate performance. You can always also enroll in additional classes to demonstrate your quantitative aptitude, but they should be really classes that are fairly evaluated and you have a grade at the end of that at the end of that class. So typically people who don't have the best academic performance can take a course online. I mean, one of the most famous ones is Harvard Business School's core program, which is a certificate program that by the end, it is intended essentially for students who are preparing to attend an MBA program, and is very quant heavy. And you have to pass an exam in order to be to get the certificate, and receiving that helps the admission team see your seriousness, see that or sort of understand that your undergraduate performance is really not indicative of your current potential or your current aptitude and your abilities today. We're a little bit over time. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I really enjoyed this presentation and getting to answer some of your questions. And I'm really sorry I didn't get to go through all of them, but I do hope you reach out and we can see how we can be of service in this next step in your professional chapter. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the summer, and good luck with all your applications.